Imagine the sound, the metallic click of the bolt, a second's pause, and again, click, click, click. 15 times in 7 seconds. This is the sound that made German soldiers fall to the ground even without shots. They thought they had stumbled upon a machine gun nest, but it was one man, with one rifle, Lee-Enfield. According to British archives, small arms caused 60 to 70% of all combat casualties in the First World War. Not artillery, not gas, not tanks, ordinary rifles, and among them, the Lee-Enfield No.4 and its predecessor stood out with one fatal advantage: speed. Reload speed. Killing speed. Speed that no one expected from a bolt-action rifle. This video is about how one technical detail turned the infantryman into a killing machine, and why even today, 100 years later, this sound commands respect from those who understand the mechanics of battle. The history of small arms is a history of compromises. First there were muskets, 1 shot per minute, if you're lucky. Then came rifled rifles, more accurate, but even slower. The American Civil War showed the advantages of magazine loading, but the real revolution began in the late 19th century. The French created the Liebel, the Germans, the Gewehr 88. The British experimented with the Lee Metford. They all used smokeless powder and a magazine system. The problem was one thing: how to make the soldier shoot quickly without losing accuracy. Here begins a technical revolution that few people notice. The Lee-Enfield appeared in 1895 and immediately caused controversy. The American James Paris Lee proposed a bolt design that seemed strange. Instead of the traditional vertical lift of the handle, the Lee-Enfield bolt had a shorter stroke, only 90 degrees. It seemed like a trifle, but it was this trifle that changed everything. The classic Mauser bolt required a full 90-degree turn, a return, a cartridge feed, and closing. The movement was accurate but long. The soldier had to raise his elbow high, tear the rifle off his shoulder, and aim again. The Lee-Enfield allowed him to keep the weapon practically on his shoulder the entire time. The bolt went back short and smooth. The hand moved naturally, without unnecessary effort. 10 rounds from the magazine, and a trained shooter could fire them in 15 seconds. Record holders did it in 7. Another factor was added to this: the magazine itself. The Lee-Enfield had a 10-round magazine. Gewehr 98, 5 rounds. Mosin-Nagant, 5. Springfield, 5. Double the firepower without reloading. This meant that the British infantryman could fire twice as long before he had to take out a clip. And when he did, he would load not 5 rounds, but 10. 2 5-round clips were inserted from above through an open bolt. A simple, fast, effective mechanism. But technology is only half the story. The other half is training. The British Army had a tradition that went back to the Napoleonic Wars. Musket fire was then a ritual. Rows of infantry fired volleys, reloaded in unison, fired again. When rifled rifles appeared, the British did not abandon the idea of massed fire. They simply changed their approach. Instead of simultaneous volleys, they fired continuously. Each soldier became a separate firing unit, and the Lee-Enfield was the perfect tool for this. British recruits were trained to shoot at targets from 300 yards away. The norm was 15 hits per minute, not just 15 shots. 15 hits in a circle 30 centimeters in diameter, per minute. This meant that each soldier had to not only reload quickly, but also aim quickly, compensate for recoil, hold his breath, pull the trigger without jerking. Mechanical work brought to automatism, not heroism, not inspiration, drill, repetition. Thousands of shots in training until the movements became reflex. And now, August 1914, theory collides with reality. The German army invades Belgium. The Schlieffen Plan provides for a quick maneuver, bypassing the French fortifications, reaching Paris in 6 weeks. The German generals expect the British Expeditionary Force to be a token contingent, a small professional army that can be easily overwhelmed by sheer numbers. They are wrong. Battle of Mons, August 23, 1914. The British Expeditionary Force, 70,000 men, takes up positions along the canal. On the German side, von Kluck's First Army, 160,000 soldiers, advances. A double advantage. The Germans expect a quick breakthrough. They are getting a meat grinder. The German infantry charges in dense formations. It is standard tactics. get within effective range, lie down, fire on the enemy, then charge forward under artillery cover. The problem is that the effective range of the Lee-Enfield is much greater than that of the Gewehr 98. The British open fire from 500 yards. The front ranks of the Germans fall. The second ranks keep going. Fall too. Third. Fourth. The German officers do not understand what is happening there. The intelligence reported on the British infantry, and the density of fire corresponds to the machine gun positions. The British have Maxim machine guns, 2 per battalion, but the main fire is carried out by ordinary infantrymen, 15 rounds per minute per rifleman. A battalion is about 1,000 rifles, 15,000 bullets per minute, more than a dozen machine guns. The testimonies of German soldiers who survived repeat the same thing. We thought we had come across machine gun nest. The fire did not stop. It was impossible to raise your head. The British riflemen did not heroically repel the attacks. They methodically did the job. Aim, shot, bolt back, bolt forward, aim, shot, as in the exercises. The only difference is that instead of paper targets, living people, and instead of marks on paper, bodies on the field. But Mons is not a victory. This is a retreat that has been organized. The Germans have been stopped, but not defeated. The British forces are retreating with the French. The race to the sea begins. Both sides are trying to outflank each other, advance to the English Channel, secure a strategic advantage. And again the Lee-Enfield proves its effectiveness, not in general battles, but in a multitude of small skirmishes, rearguard actions, delaying actions. The problem is that there are not so many trained British riflemen. The Expeditionary Force is a professional army that has trained for years, but losses are increasing. By the end of 1914, most of the original BEF is either killed or wounded. New recruits arrive with minimal training. They are given the same Lee-Enfields, but they do not have time to master the skill. The norm of 15 hits per minute becomes unattainable. The real rate of fire drops to 8 or 10 rounds. This is still more than the enemy, but the advantage is reduced, and here the next aspect appears, psychological. The sound of the Lee-Enfield bolt becomes recognizable. German soldiers learn to distinguish it among the general roar of battle, a click that comes in series, without pauses, without stops. This is a signal of danger. If you hear this sound nearby, it means a British sniper or a well-trained marksman is firing, so you need to hide immediately. Snipers are a separate story. The Lee-Enfield was not a sniper rifle in the classical sense. It did not have the rigidity of the Mauser CS-98 or the accuracy of the Mosin Nagant. The short-stroke bolt, although fast, gave more backlash. But the British solved this problem by the method of selection. From thousands of rifles, the most accurate specimens were selected. Optical sights were installed and calibrated for a specific shooter. The resulting models were not as effective as the German Mauser sniper rifles, but the Lee-Enfield had one advantage: the speed of repeated fire. A sniper with a Mauser fired a single shot and could be detected by the flash or sound. He needed time to reload and re-aim. A sniper with a Lee-Enfield fired 3 or 4 shots before the enemy had time to react. The effectiveness of a single shot was lower, but the overall effectiveness of the series was higher. This contradicted the sniper doctrine of 1 shot, 1 kill, but it worked, especially on the Western Front, where distances rarely exceeded 400 meters. Trench warfare changed everything. As both sides dug in, massive fire became less relevant. No one walked in dense columns under bullets. Instead, short sprints, small group advances, night raids. The Lee-Enfield remained effective, but for different reasons. The 10-round magazine meant that a soldier could repel a surprise attack without reloading. The fast shutter made it possible to fire at unintended targets. An enemy who had risen from a trench would show his head for a second. The shooter's reaction time was the difference between life and death. And here begins the next phase of evolution. The Lee-Enfield SMLE, short magazine Lee-Enfield. Mark III was good, but not perfect. The sighting bar is complicated. The trigger mechanism is sensitive to dirt. Production is expensive. During the First World War, this was not critical. British industry managed to supply the front, but in the interwar period it became clear that modernization was needed. The Lee-Enfield No.4 appears in 1941. This is not a revolution, but an evolution. The shutter is the same. The magazine is the same. The caliber point, 303 British, is the same. But the details have changed. The sighting bar is simplified. An aperture sight instead of a complex bar with adjustments. Easier to aim, faster to produce. The trigger mechanism is reinforced. The forend is shorter, which makes the weapon lighter. The barrel is heavier, which improves accuracy. Technically, the No. 4 is worse than the Mark III in some aspects. It is heavier, longer, but it is more reliable, and most importantly, cheaper to produce. This is critical for World War II, where the bill is millions of rifles. Britain, Canada, the USA produced No. 4 in millions of copies. Each of them is capable of doing the same as the original Lee-Enfield, 15 rounds per minute in trained hands. But World War II is a different war. Automatic weapons become the standard. The Germans massively used the MP-40. The Americans, the M1 Garand, a semi-automatic rifle that does not require a bolt. The Soviet PPSH-41 flood the front with fire. Against this background, the bolt-action Lee-Enfield seems archaic, but it continues to serve. Why?